Hi, my name is Mary Wong, and I am a registered traditional Chinese medicine practitioner and acupuncturist, founder of Alive Holistic Health, and author of the book Pathways to Pregnancy. And tonight, I'm going to be talking to you with my live post number 57 on bleeding and how it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end, whether it is when you see it before you expect your period or actually during early pregnancy. So let me start by acknowledging the fact that when anyone sees any amount of bleeding during this amount of time, it can be quite upsetting to the point of traumatic. And, the emotions that go along with just seeing the sight of blood, whether it is spotting, to a little streak, to full-on bleeding, to chunks of blood, people panic. And then there's worry and fear and anger and frustration, sense of hopelessness, grief, all of that. So then what do? Right? So acknowledging that, you have to understand the mindset that is going along with viewing and seeing and witnessing the bleeding. So really, what does it mean? So I'm going to start by speaking practically in terms of what does it truly mean? Yes, of course, for a person who's trying to conceive during that 2-week wait, if it's like about the time that you're going to get your period, then of course your automatic go-to is, damn, this is my period. And here we are again, another time we're not getting pregnant, right? I mean, that's going to be there. And then for a person that is pregnant early on, the automatic go-to is, crap, I'm going to miscarry. And it's devastating in both parts. And I'm not going to compare apples and oranges in terms of how one feels, but either way, it's not a nice position to be in. However, what I will say too is this the truth? Is it a sign of not being pregnant, or is this a sign that there's going to be a spontaneous demise, meaning miscarriage? Well, that's not fully accurate either, because certainly when it comes to let's start with, in that 2-week wait of waiting to find out you're pregnant. If you're having it, a couple of days after your either IVF, IUI, or actually just trying to conceive naturally on your own, seeing a bit of blood, automatically, again, we assume period. But sometimes it could mean, if you're taking progesterone, it's the progesterone, extra hormones. Sometimes if you've done like an IUI or an IVF, it could mean that it's just an irritation from the technology, having something shoved up there, not so nice. And then there's also early on, it can be implantation bleeding. And then in terms of seeing a little bit of blood or spotting prior to just getting your period, it may or may not actually be that you're getting your period. And of course, during this time, oftentimes it is, but then there are also instances where it's not. And so I'm going to now switch over to the conversation about seeing bleeding when you're pregnant. Because when you're pregnant and you see bleeding, which by the way, at our clinic and a lot of people who go through fertility treatment, close to like 40% of our patients, myself included, by the way, when I went through my treatments, I found that there's a high incidence of people getting blood clotting, subchorionic hemorrhaging, fancy way of blood clots, right? And how it shows up is it could be literally like a drop of blood to full-on bleed and even large chunks of blood clots. And so, your first reaction is, oh my gosh, I'm going to spontaneously miscarry. But the reality is it may not be that. So if I'm telling you that it's 40% of the people, then, and by the way, the 40% of these people that I see that have that, they typically go on to have a healthy baby to term. So what percentage is that? I would say at least like 85% of the patients that get the blood clotting signs, the bleeding signs, go on to have a healthy pregnancy. So if you're watching this and you're pregnant and you're worried about or looking for signs of bleeding, like you're going to get your period, like you're going to miscarry, well, first of all, it's not the greatest sign anyway, because it doesn't necessarily indicate that you will miscarry. And when you do see signs of bleeding, it really doesn't mean that it's over. And again, as I say this, I know full well that no matter what I say, when you see it, it is a shock and it is a panic. So more importantly, knowing what it is, so it could be subchorionic hemorrhage, i.e. blood clots, or again, it could be the progesterone supplements that you're taking, which is highly probable, especially for those that are doing suppository, I find, because again, it can irritate the tissues. And but even so for those ones that are having injectables. So I guess I liken it to when you're adding extra progesterone, you're really like making your uterus, I call it like supersized, right? So there's an artificial way of supersizing your uterus to kind of like hold the pregnancy into place. So when that happens, there's a higher likelihood of bleeding. And then maybe I'll also surmise that maybe a higher likelihood of developing blood clots. And so sometimes we fear that blood clots will cause a miscarriage. So the natural thing to do is to not move. And in the olden days, people would say have full bed rest. But now we see more and more that you don't really necessarily have to do that. Like, so I myself had the scare of the blood clots. And I know as a practitioner, it's okay to move around. I don't have to keep full bed rest. But yet simultaneously, my instinct is, if I see signs of blood, I'm going to be careful. I'm going to be kind to myself. So I didn't want to be alone. I actually went to work because I thought if I was going to stay home and just lie in bed, I would drive myself crazy. Every hour would feel like a day, right? So I went to work, but I took it easy. I barely walked. I have one of these rolly stools. So I would like roll around from room to room and treat my patients that way. So whatever works for you. So you're not in my situation, but if you have an office job, not a big deal because you get to just sit there and worry less. Now, if you do have a sit-down job and you're sitting in front of the computer, thank you, Liz. Thank you for saying that. It's great advice. Good. I'm so glad. But back to when you're at work, don't start Googling about bleeding, because what you end up finding on Google is not just the real technicality, but other people's experiences through those groups like chat lines and whatever. And when you Google, when you type it in, and those little chat rooms show up with all these people's fears and bad experiences. And what I say is when a person is pregnant, what you want to do is you actually stay in a healthy, good bubble, so free of stress, right? So when you look at those crazy chat lines, I'm telling you, chat rooms rather, it'll make you more freaked out. So please don't do that. And then, then what can you do? Well, the very first thing is, I don't believe in false hope. I don't believe in saying, oh, it's okay. Let's just think positive and everything will turn out okay. Because, really, how is it working for you so far? Because all you're doing is suppressing, shoving down those emotions. And that's not so helpful. So what I say is, be comfortable with being uncomfortable with your emotions. If you're in the position of trying to get pregnant, look at it and just say, okay, how am I feeling with this? All right, I am upset. Okay, where do I feel it in my body? And literally do a body scan. And also acknowledge when I see this and whatever story that comes to my head, is this the truth? Is this reality? No, it is something that you're making up in your mind because really, or actually, I'm going to say this too. So people will have past experiences. Well, it didn't work before, so obviously this is my period. Or I see bleeding and I'm in my early pregnancy and I've gone through this before, so surely I'm just going to miscarry again. Well, I'm going to tell you that every time you go through a new cycle, it brings new promises and it brings a new situation and it brings a new potential baby that will be put onto this earth. So when you're pregnant, it doesn't have to be a demise. So does it help to be upset? No, but we want to acknowledge it and honor it and allow yourself to go through it. But I don't want yourself to go wallow in it indefinitely. But you can certainly acknowledge it and say, oh, here I am upset. Where's my mind going with this? Is this the truth? If I'm thinking that I see, so here it is, fact, I see blood. Is it fact that I am gonna miscarry? Is it fact that I am going to get my period? Well, I say to you, no, this is what you are surmising because of your past experiences. So really, the only way to definitively, 100% confirm where you're at is through what? Beta HCG, so your blood tests for pregnancy, or also through ultrasound, right? So anywhere in between, and you in the place of not knowing, either we can go down that spiral of saying, oh my gosh, here we are again, I'm going to miscarry. Here I am again, I'm getting my period. Or we can just go into our bodies and acknowledge and see and feel, okay, where do I feel that tension in my body as I experience this? Oh, for me, oh gosh, I feel tightness in my chest. Or, I feel it in my shoulders and I'm like this. So just notice where it goes, right? And then allow yourself to breathe, even if it's just 5 breaths, because I don't know, you could have been just going to the bathroom at work and then you come out and you're like freaking out. So how do you, put yourself back together before you face people? While some, and I've witnessed it and I've seen it, some actually just go home. And if that's what you really need to do, fine. But then there's others that can't. So how can you go into a place of calm quicker? So these are little practical tips. So you check in with yourself as to what to do. And then, you see this? You breathe. I want you to breathe. And it always sounds so easy and so silly to say it because it is so simple. But I'll tell you, it's actually one of the most difficult things to do. Because most people walk around holding their breath. And certainly when you are having fear and worry, all that, it closes you up. So literally having 5 conscious breaths in and out. And to get you out of your head and into your body, what you might want to do is literally say the words either out loud or in your head and see what works for you. So for some, it's literally saying, breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. And as you see, I close my eyes when I do this. It's more effective. And when I say those words to myself, either inside of my body or out loud, I'm not into my head, which is, we swirl and we go crazy. The other one I like to do, and me personally, I'm a bit of a numbers girl, so I actually prefer to count. So instead of saying breathe in, breathe out, I count. Breathe in. I count on my in breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the exhale, I actually add in maybe 1 or 2 counts. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, So do what works for you. So it could be like 3 breaths in, 4, 5, or 6 breaths out. And do that 5 times. And it may help to settle. So I'm only giving you 2 tips because 2 tips is enough, especially when you're in that place of franticness. You may not remember anything. So please remember breathe. And secondly, please journal. Journal. Breathe. So again, it may sound very, very simple and easy. Well, fact is, it's easy and it actually works. So what do I mean by journaling? Well, for some people that actually like to write, it's a great opportunity to sit down and write. I say old school is better because people typically can write faster. But if you're like a total great typer, you can type onto a Word document and just type it and get rid of it. I call it, an expulsion of your emotional expression. To let go of some of that emotional expression that needs to be expressed. You want to be fully expressed. And unfortunately, if you're at home and with a partner, with a husband, a partner, whatever, sometimes they're not the best to speak to, especially when you're in this place. Because number one, they're not in your body. They don't fully get it. And if it's a man-woman relationship, I'll tell you right now, they really don't get it because they'll never be able to get it. They don't have the hormones that we have. They don't have our bodies. They don't have the female brain, right? So that upset makes them uncomfortable, which may make you more upset. Or, what do they typically say? It's okay. You'll be fine. Let's just be hopeful. Or, it's okay. It's going to happen soon. And I'll tell you, for me, that doesn't really work. Like, you just want to go. Right? Anyway, so, I'm going to answer a question in a second. But back to, I just on a rampage to speak and get this for you. So what I mean by journaling is that then you don't necessarily have to be confronted with an uncomfortable conversation. And secondly, sometimes these things happen in the middle of the night. So for me, when I was going through fertility challenges, after time, like my upset is like, you're so upset, you can't go into that nice deep REM sleep. So you wake up upset, and all you do is you fester and you swirl in your thoughts. So that's when I would literally go downstairs, turn on the lights, either write in my journal or physically type and create a journal, right? But for you and anyone that doesn't really like to write, my recommendation is to use your cell phone, because I'm thinking 99% of us have cell phones, maybe 100%. And if you have a cell phone, there are apps in here to record. So then you can literally record, get your emotions out by voice and say, blah, 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 I hate this. I hate my life right now. And this is the beginning of the end. Whatever it is for you. Or maybe over time when you emote, then you have a bit more clarity of mind. Does that make sense? Hope that's helpful. So journal, breathe, and spotting or bleeding is not necessarily a demise. So I'm going to look at this question here. How often can you expect progesterone clot-related bleeding in a typical first trimester? I think I actually said it, but I'll say it again. Like I said, I'm coming from my clinic, which is an experiential fact. So it's not like through clinical research by any means. But typically, anybody that uses progesterone, as I mentioned earlier, I used it myself, and I experienced blood clots in my first trimester. And it is, I would say, at least 40%. And really, like, as I revisit that, I'm like thinking 50%. Easy. And it doesn't mean a demise. It really doesn't. And I'm living proof of that, thank goodness. And the blood clots that come out are meant to come out. So what happens with blood clots, by the way? Some gets reabsorbed naturally, and others, not others, but or bits, physically come out. So I'm going to tell you a story. I had a patient a couple of years back. She did IVF, and she ended up with twins. So it was carrying twins. And then she started to bleed. And same thing as I'm telling you, I told her, I said, listen, it's okay. It's very common. And especially, you're carrying a twin pregnancy. There's even more juiciness, more stuff floating around in your body. So highly likely you can have a blood clot. So sure enough, she checked it out. It was a blood clot. So she leaves, fine, was okay. And then next thing you know, she gets this giant blood clot. Like we're talking giant chunk. So automatic, of course, is the panic and saying, oh my gosh, not only am I bleeding, I have actually miscarried. Large, giant clot, right? So she goes and actually gets an ultrasound. And when she got an ultrasound, they saw both the two little developing fetuses, developing embryos, still there, happy, healthy. And to this day, it's been a couple of years, so I don't know how old they are now, but they're alive and well. So even when it's as scary as that, she was 100% sure that what came out was the baby. It wasn't that. So I tell you, when you see any kind of spotting, yes, you can do what I do, but absolutely go and get your tests. Go to the doctor and know for real. Don't just surmise and, create fantasies, because we don't really know the truth. The truth is through testing. The testing is not just pulse taking, because guess what? In Chinese medicine, when you feel the pulse and it feels nice and strong, that means that your body wants to carry it. And sometimes it's if it's a spontaneous miscarriage and your body's strong, that just means that it's an inevitable miscarriage where, chromosomally there's something wrong, something like that, right? But anyway, I don't want to go on that tangent. I want to go on a more positive light where I'm telling you that babies come despite bleeding, okay? And then added to that, I hope that answers your question, Liz. And so I don't really have anything to say beyond that, because it's pretty specific, right? Bleeding is bleeding is bleeding. So allow yourself to recap, allow yourself to go through your emotions. Don't keep it in, and don't pretend and fake hope. Breathe, acknowledge your emotions and breathe. And then journal, get the crap out of you so that you can have clarity, and then get tested. All right, so that's it for today or tonight. So I hope you found it valuable, and I really, really wish you well on your journey. And if you have any questions or other requests of what you would like me to cover on my topics for future, please feel free to PM me and let me know what that would be. But next week, I have a lovely guest, and she is a miracle in progress, where, again, she's a person who really nobody thought would be able to get pregnant spontaneously. And anyway, I don't want to go on about it. I want to keep it a surprise, but it's a really warm-hearted story, and something that you can hold on to, that even no matter how long your journey is, there is a possibility and there is hope. So please join me next Wednesday for my live posts at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in the meantime, please check out my posts below. There's lots of topics that you can look at. You can also pick up my book, Pathways to Pregnancy. And there's lots of hopeful stories and very practical advice. And in fact, on the piece about bleeding during pregnancy is, I believe, 81. So here it is. And there's lots of more tidbits of advice that people really don't tell you about. And I certainly end up, for some reason, telling patients where I'm like, maybe a fertility clinic should be telling you this, but apparently I'm doing the job. And any traditional Chinese medicine practitioners or other, even naturopathic doctors, they have insight and have time to explain things to you. So really go and find your local TCM practitioner or naturopathic doctor or other people in the holistic profession and seek help and be okay, and call on your village. All right. Have a great night. And I'll see you next Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time, 8 p.m. Okay? And by the way, I will be away in San Diego, but I am so committed to you guys that I'm going to post it. So have a great night. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.